just one more minute, and then I think we'll be ready to get started. Okay, Alan, you want to kick us off? Alan, can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure, happy to. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on 414 Day, when we celebrate everything that we love about Milwaukee, both past and present. We couldn't think of a better day to give people a first look at the new Milwaukee Revealed gallery that will be featured in the new Future Museum. This is the third of 5 permanent galleries that we have shared publicly thus far. The roots of the Milwaukee Public Museum were established around the same time Milwaukee became a city. It was in 1846 when a series of villages were incorporated to become the city of Milwaukee under the leadership of Solomon Juneau. You'll hear more about him later. But 5 years after the city's founding, the principal of the German English Academy began taking students out on excursions to collect geological, plant, and animal specimens, which became the foundation for the world-class collections now owned by Milwaukee County and cared for by the museum. Just like the city we call home, we consider the museum to be rich in history, diverse in cultures, and filled with natural wonders, proud of our traditions and ever evolving. So as we look to the future of the museum, we know we have tremendous opportunity to share stories about this great city in ways never done before. But before we get into the details, it's important to understand how we got to this point. Community input has been an essential part of our exhibit planning and design process. We know one of the most popular exhibits in the current museum is the Streets of Old Milwaukee. But knowing this wasn't enough. It was important for us to understand what people love about this exhibit. And as we asked more and more questions and had more conversations with a multitude of individuals and groups, some patterns started to emerge. We learned that for many people, their love of the streets of Old Milwaukee is not about any one particular object or storefront, but rather the feeling that they have when they walk through the exhibit. The immersive design transports them to another place and time. This was at the forefront of our minds as we developed the concepts for the Milwaukee Revealed Gallery. As a result, what you'll see in a few minutes is a gallery that, despite being new, feels very familiar. In addition to being intentional about the immersive design, we're also creating exhibits in a way that enables us to rotate collection items on display. The current museum doesn't offer us that latitude, yet we think visitors will enjoy being able to see new items each time they visit. It's also best practice for caring for collection items to take them off exhibit periodically. And speaking of collections, we're often asked what will become of the objects and specimens that are on display in the current museum. All of the collection items will be moved to the new museum or into an offsite storage facility. Some will be on display in the new museum immediately. Others will be carefully stored until they can be rotated in. So I want to be clear that we are not selling, destroying, or giving away any of the collection items. And finally, current museum fans will be happy to know that we are creating a digital scan of the Streets of Old Milwaukee and the European Village exhibits that will be accessible via a virtual reality experience at the Future Museum, enabling us to preserve these beloved exhibit experiences for the next generation. And we'll be sharing more on that at a future date. So I have asked Helen Diviak and Chris Miller from our design partners, Think Design, to walk us through a few sketches of the Milwaukee Revealed gallery. What they will reveal today is just a sampling of the exhibits visitors will enjoy within the Milwaukee Revealed gallery. Now, reminder, we are only about halfway through the exhibit design process, so we have lots of work left to do. But this unveiling will at least give people a sense of the direction we're headed in. So Helen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ellen. Hi, again, my name is Helen Diviak. I'm Senior Curator of Interpretation and Experience with Think Design, and I'm joined by my colleague, Chris Muller, Senior Exhibit Designer. We're two members of a much larger team that is working on this labor of love to bring the Future Museum to the forefront. And we're super excited to be able to share our plans for Milwaukee Revealed. Like Ellen said, Milwaukee Revealed is very much inspired by the streets of old Milwaukee. We know how beloved that exhibit is to so many people, and we ourselves completely fell in love with that exhibit. So it's been a real honor and privilege to reimagine it. As Ellen also said, the new exhibit will be an immersive experience, a multi-sensory experience that brings you to the streets of Milwaukee, but allows you to see them in a way that you never have before. It's not just about taking you back in time, it's about peeling back the layers. So we're discovering, yeah, sure, common knowledge, but that's common knowledge that's sitting aside new things, secrets hidden in plain sight. So we're not just talking about our founding fathers, we're talking about our founding mothers. We're talking about Indigenous peoples and immigrants' experiences. We're talking about the sewer systems that are hidden behind our walls or under our streets. We're also talking about our neighbors, a community, not just of people, but of the critters and plants that create this amazing urban environment. So we're going to share a couple images with you. You'll just hang tight while I get this up. Okay, everyone can see my screen, I think. So as I said, the big idea here is that there's more to Milwaukee than meets the eye. This new exhibit is going to uncover the often overlooked networks of neighbors, waterways, greenways that interlace to create a vibrant and ever-changing community. And as I said, you're going to walk into a streetscape that should feel very familiar, yet you are seeing the new. So what you're seeing here right in the center of this image is, of course, the historic Mitchell Building, a historically landmark building in downtown Milwaukee. This in itself is an amazing story, but what you might not know is that on the site of the Mitchell Building, before the Mitchell Building, was the site of one of Solomon Juneau's and his wife, Josette Vaux Juneau's home. I'm going to have Chris talk a little bit about how this optical reveal, this special effect works.
Yes, this special effect is basically, it is the facade of the Mitchell Building and its unique architecture printed on a scrim-like material, which when lit from the outside is opaque, and you see all the architectural details. When the light comes up from within the space, then the silhouette of the Juneau cabin, original building, becomes visible. And that is, in fact, a space that you can then go around the opposite side from what we see here and enter into that space and see exhibits about Solomon Juneau and his wife and community.
Right, and I think that was a really important thing to us, is that you can actually enter this building, and then when you're in the inside, you are seeing exhibits filled with historical artifacts that talk about the fur trade being a really, really important initial commerce, initial business here in Milwaukee. But equally to the founding of Milwaukee wasn't just Solomon Juneau, which I think is a name that many of you might know, but his wife, Josette Vaux, who was a Menominee woman, and that her heritage was a really, really important part of creating a new network of peoples in this place. In addition to the Mitchell Building and the Juneau Reveal, if you go down the street to the right, you're going to be going down a row of shops. We have a dress or clothing store, a frozen custard store, because you can't do Milwaukee without frozen custard, and then a third rotating store. Our third rotating store is, again, an opportunity for us to really feature the millions of objects in the museum's collection. As Ellen mentioned, we need to rotate objects often for their care, but also so the public gets to see more of it. So we see this as a really exciting opportunity that every time you come back to the museum, you're seeing new stuff. But I'm going to have Chris dive in a little bit deeper into the custard shop here. Chris, what are people going to be able to experience in the frozen custard shop?
In the frozen custard shop, you will see what one would expect in the inside of a frozen custard shop, a countertop with their frozen custard machines, which you'll be able to operate and have different flavors of apparent frozen custard come out of. But then that also leads you to learn about where do the flavors of frozen custard come from? How do those flavors and the things that make up frozen custard, how do they come to Milwaukee to begin with, and what is their history? And so beyond just experiencing the ambiance of a frozen custard shop, we see its connections to the wider community and the rest of the world.
And then here in the dress shop?
And then here in the dress shop we can also go into, and we see dresses on mannequins in the store window, and we can also go inside and see more dresses on display. And this is an opportunity to display some of the vast collection of clothing that is in the museum's holdings that can be changed out every so often, and use this as a way to tell different stories about different materials, about the wool of Wisconsin, or other historical aspects, and even present day stories.
Yeah, what I think is really exciting about the clothing shop is the opportunity here to showcase so many items that have actually been donated by the community to the museum. The museum has a vast textile collection, dresses, suits, hats, shoes, you name it. And getting those things out on view, because these are very fragile items, can be a challenge. So we've designed a very flexible space where more of those items can be rotated out on view. But again, as with the custard shop, the point isn't just to tell a history of this space, but to connect it back to nature. So with the clothing shop, it's, well, where does silk come from? Where does the indigo that goes in our denim come from? What is the difference between different kinds of cottons? So again, always bringing us back to our natural environment. Now, across the way over here, you should see familiar Cream City brick. So this facade here is of our pharmacy, but before you even go inside the pharmacy, you will be learning about Cream City brick. Now, I think most of you will be familiar with Cream City brick, but you might not be familiar with where it comes from or its geological origins. Of course, the museum has a collection that goes back not just hundreds or thousands of years, but millions of years. They have a geology collection. So this gives us an opportunity to talk about a different kind of specialty. And that is really like the actual earth, the actual rock that Milwaukee is on and Wisconsin is on, and how that was used to build the city. Behind the facade of the Cream City brick, we're telling a story of the Cream City Medical Society. So this was an organization of African-American physicians that came together in 1927 to be able to provide care for the growing African-American population in Milwaukee. And that story sits alongside other stories of healing and well-being in a city. So different kinds of healing, different kinds of holistic healing, different kinds of practices, looking at it from a multicultural point of view to understand what keeps an urban environment healthy. And as you step out of the pharmacy, you will come along the waterfront. So it should feel as if you're walking across one of those amazing bridges in downtown Milwaukee and crossing over a river. Chris, do you want to describe a little bit about what the experience is as you walk over that bridge?
Yes, as you look out over the waterfront, you'll see a little bit of the river and many rivers, and then buildings across the way. And then along the railing, you have a reader rail where you can push little panels and you can make lights come up in the windows across the way, you can actually illuminate the water from within and see different schools of fish that are there. So you're actually controlling a bit of the environment as you look out across it.
Great. And just around the corner, if we're going to take you around where this woman and young person are standing, so here's our riverfront right here. We come to a building that should look pretty familiar. It should look sort of like a common facade in any sort of main street part of neighborhood of Milwaukee. But what's inside is far from ordinary. What's inside, we're taking you back to the powerhouse days of beer in Milwaukee. Of course, you can't tell a story of Milwaukee without talking about beer. And our big question once you walk back in time into the Schlitz Beer Hall is, why beer, why here? Of course, Germans and Poles were immigrating all over the United States, but they brought their beer making traditions to Milwaukee. And that wasn't just a cultural story. This is a story of people coming to a place that have access to natural resources, to agriculture where you can grow wheat and barley and hops, to rivers where you have fresh water, but you can actually export your beer out to the rest of the world. So we're really excited about bringing you into an immersive environment where you can maybe hear a little bit of polka playing, see some people having a good time, but again, really learn about the roots of beer in Milwaukee. And across the way over here in this building behind this gentleman, again, sort of a normal vernacular building. Once you go inside, again, you are transported back in time to another Milwaukee great, a gentleman named Increase Lapham. I love his name. And I think it will be a familiar name to some of you, but Increase Lapham was really Wisconsin's first naturalist. So here's a man who loved Wisconsin, was fascinated by everything he saw. And it was his efforts, his questions, his documentation that helped lead to actually the founding of the museum and many organizations, scientific organizations, educational organizations across the city. So you'll feel like you're going into his study. You will be able to actually get your hands on